Hey everyone, welcome to Capco's series of discussions on the topics of AI and adoption within financial services. My name is Chinmoy Bhatiya. I'm a leader for Capco in US in the AI and engineering space. I'm an engineer by heart, and today for the topic of conversation around the infusion of AI in the SDLC, I have with me my colleague Cody Watson. Cody, you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Chinmoy. My name is Cody Watson, and I am a senior leader within our technology and engineering space here in Capco US. A lot of my work day to day is working with clients within the wealth and asset management space, the mortgage industry, as well as the banking and payment space to really lead development teams as they look to develop high quality solutions across the software delivery lifecycle.
Excellent. And so we've got a couple of engineers on the call today between myself and Cody. We've worked together on a number of projects enabling different applications and driving our technology delivery teams within a heavily regulated industry. We're going to be talking about AI in the context of the software development lifecycle and all of the different opportunities there. But I think it would be important for us to acknowledge that it has become an area of focus for all of our clients, AI in general. There's definitely a lot of skepticism in the beginning, maybe a little apprehension as well, given there's some unknowns about how this will all play out. But suffice to say, it has become an area of great focus, great prioritization for all of our clients, especially given the promised ROI of automation and increased efficiency and productivity, which is something we're all looking for. But equally, I think many of our clients are looking at it as a way to accelerate their growth, do more with less, and stretch outside their comfort zones as well. Within that context, where you're trying to do more with less, your ability to adapt to change and technology changes becomes paramount. And I think that's what excites us so much as engineers about the SDLC. Before we go further, you want to talk to our audience about what SDLC means or the implications or anything like that?
Exactly. You started off saying software delivery lifecycle, and that's a little bit of a mouthful for me, so I'm going to stick to SDLC. But simply, it is taking an idea from concept to reality, helping our users, the end users of most of our clients, actually be able to capture on the technology at hand to accelerate, to automate, but also just to use the newest and greatest technologies to deliver high functioning software. And as an engineer, that's all I really care about at the end of the day is how do I take an idea, yes, some syntax here, some test cases there, but ultimately lead it to a production idea to have that end user's life easier.
Yeah, and with many of our clients becoming akin to technology firms, right? Their core business may be delivering financial services, but given the size of their technology estates and the fact that a lot of their customers and users engage with them through their technology platforms and channels, the ability to respond to change is dependent on their ability to roll out technology change faster. Any thoughts on that?
Roll out technologies, but also in a constrained and regulatory sense, keeping in mind the ability to handle what legislation is around user privacy, data management, but also understanding the financial services is highly regulated. The engineer really has to take a step back to understand those core concepts, but also the domain-specific knowledge to take that solution and make it even better by customizing it to, say, a wealth asset management space or mortgage space, things I have a deep background in.
And so the engineers in the financial services context have a greater responsibility, or maybe life's a little bit difficult for them, right? Because it's not just about implementing the requirements to a T, but actually understanding the business context, understanding the workflows within which they operate, and anything we can do to create more capacity for them to maybe focus less on the rote work of creating software and more on the differentiating value-added work of delivering business value within those processes would be valuable. We were talking earlier also about the fact that the SDLC itself is a little constrained, right? For dealing financial services, there's the auditability requirements and things like that. Do you want to talk about that for a little bit?
The auditability requirements, the traceability through your code, through your test cases, to be able to prove each line of code actually has that intended use, not only from a technology fundamentals, but also from that business and a regulatory constraint. Being able to understand the full SDLC allows for engineers to understand what can be automized, what can be more efficient to make their lives even better. And AI gives us that capability, and I'm excited to get into it today.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about that. We'll get into all aspects of how AI can be used to infuse the SDLC, accelerate it, make life easier for engineers and so on. But also, as you pointed out, the security aspects of it and putting an armor around the SDLC, I've heard you refer to it.
We'll come back to that here in a little bit.
All right, Cody. So let's talk about the SDLC as it stands today. There's been a little bit of AI adoption already. Where do we stand right now? What are the opportunities? Why are people excited about this?
I think that's a fantastic question. But as a technologist at heart, but a history historian and a passion for history, I really want to take a step back and I want to think through how we got here first, because I think there's lots of key nuggets along the way that help us understand where we're at. Namely, if I think through waterfall, agile, DevSecOps, and all these latest trends leading up to AI-infused SDLC work, I think a lot of it's tied to how fast you can iterate. What I mean by this is if you think back to pre-internet boom, a lot of the cycles were big ideas. How do we make them quickly into iteration? And oftentimes those were driven by business owners and technologists alike to really amplify and think through how do I continue to iterate on that. And I think the more and more we go through the different cycles, we understand that the technologies, the people, and the processes have changed to make those iteration cycles smaller and smaller.
Right.
And really trying to get to a point where you can automate to achieve efficiencies where possible, but also understanding that some things just can't be automated. And that's where you need a specialized skill to come in and help you understand that intelligence.
Got it. So the fact that we're making these iteration cycles smaller over agile and other ways of working has been beneficial because you have fewer opportunities to miss what the business has in mind, right? And that's how you ended up with more integrated business and technology teams as well. So where does AI come into all of this?
Yeah, I think AI gives us the ability to take a typical agile sprint of 2 weeks down to a few hours. You could really use agile and the different capabilities across agentic platforms and different coding tools to allow for you to take an idea, iterate on it while we're doing this podcast, and being able to then see something and respond to it in a matter of minutes, hours, versus waiting 2 weeks to do that end of sprint demo if I'm speaking in an agile sense.
Got it. Now, there are a ton of different AI tools, right? Like you and I spend a lot of time evaluating vendors and speaking with other solution providers and so on. And I'm sure a lot of our audience will also empathize with the fact that it's just a very dense space. How should someone navigate that? How should our clients navigate that and pick the right tooling for the SDLC?
The first thing you have to know is what tools are available within a regulatory sense, within a InfoSec sense. Once that's out of the way, it really becomes what can you imagine? I think a lot of our engineers are first adopters. And that's a tradition, if I'm dating back to the history of all the different cycles of transformation, engineers are always the first adopters in the open source community. So they have an opinion. They were out there experimenting in their off time. And I think a lot of that ability allows for us to then take it to our clients and say, what are your engineers excited to use? What captures their eye? The one thing I will caution, though, is there is not a leader yet. Every cycle, every new model, new large language model that comes out from one of the big shops really leads to new tools or updates to these tools to where they continue to leapfrog each other. And I think as we get further and further down the line, we might see some emerging leaders. For right now, it's about experimenting and innovating.
And it also sounds like maybe given that there's so many tools available, you might see a logical grouping of them for different parts of the SDLC.
Absolutely.
Right? Even if you're doing like agile or working in shorter iteration cycles and so on, you'll see tools that are more towards the design and the business requirements definition side of things. You'll see tools that are on the later down in the life cycle for testing and things of that nature. But it seems like most of the industry focus with AI tooling is on making coders code faster.
Correct.
And my opinion is, well, that's only making people run faster in place, right? You need to have a good shovel-ready backlog of work for them to work on, and then good processes downstream to test and productionize them. How should clients think about expanding beyond just the middle piece of the SDLC with coding and going into other areas?
The first advice I'd give is take a break and go to the movies.
Okay.
Yeah. I was over the summer, I was watching, Brad Pitt's latest blockbuster, F1. Okay. It's about, a racing team, an F1 team trying to win it all. And I think when you look into that movie, one of the climactic scenes is that typical movie trope. Let's build a team. Let's get everybody bought in. But Brad Pitt gives a great speech, and it's about how everyone from the design team of the car, of the engineering team, of the race team that really does a lot of the tactical work, to the actual drivers. How do they all work together to make one meaningful contribution every lap,
Right.
to where you can gain that tenth of a second, to where at the end of the race you're gaining seconds and you're able to go from last to first.
Nice. Okay, that's a great analogy, and I'm going to use that. But basically, the culmination of different skills, with each owning one piece of the life cycle, bringing it together to save you the crucial moments that add value. I think that's a great analogy, actually, for the SDLC. And shameless plug, of course, on our behalf. We do have some accelerators with AI infusion that enable our clients to move faster in the requirements creation and then the testing phase, nicknamed the BA Genie and the Test Genie, respectively, which have garnered some interest. But that's with that mindset of make the whole F1 team go faster so that you can shave off a few seconds at the end of it. Must be pretty risky, no? Like our industry, of course, is very risk averse. So how do we deal with that?
You've clearly seen the movie where there was definitely a couple crashes. Crashes happen. I think that's similar to the SDLC, where there are risks, and not everybody being able to bring their A game every day. Sometimes you have to rely on a rookie or veteran leaders, or even sometimes you have things that are out of control. Thinking here about race penalties or regulatory pressures, if you want to play with the analogy a little bit. But I think ultimately, if you're thinking about ROI and how I win the race, it's all about how do you consistently add the contributions to make those meaningful milestones every lap. Just like in the SDLC, you need every division, every org chart across the different respective SDLC phases, really take that next step to be able to deliver. And I think that's where AI comes in. As you mentioned, we have some of our own custom accelerators, but I also think through how can those individuals leverage what their processes are today, see if those are processes in an AI future, and if so, what AI tools can I use to really make those meaningful contributions.
Got it. Okay, so sticking with that analogy, the ROI is there. You're definitely able to go faster.
Mhm.
I guess time will tell how much faster you're able to go, whether you're shaving seconds or minutes off of each race. But it doesn't seem like it's just about tooling.
Mhm.
Even if you might be able to get some guardrails in place with the tooling, having a revolutionized process or a transformed process for developing software, which has some of those controls built in, and retraining and orienting people in the new world is probably important as well.
Yeah, and the last reference to the movie, which is a great movie for those who haven't bought in yet. The reference there is Brad Pitt is the aged-old veteran. He's coming back with all of this knowledge of different ways of looking at it. He races different races. He doesn't just race F1, and that's really where I think value can be had of we think about the SDLC of tomorrow. It is what can be done, what options are out there, what processes, challenging it not only from an aged and veteran, but also from a rookie, the counterpart to Brad Pitt's character there, and thinking through what, innovation technologies can I use to format my processes.
Wow. Okay. So we might end up with teams that are a combination of the senior engineers that are really understand what's happening from a systems perspective and an architecture perspective, with more of the new wave, the vibe coders and so on, and pairing them together in a pod to achieve that speed to market.
Absolutely. I think the vibe coders, the context engineers, that's where it's going to meet. If you take the seasoned context individuals who have the context of why I made this trade-off, given, SDLC is all about trade-offs, and understanding the different pressures put on from an architectural, a tool, data, or even regulatory, thinking about those trade-offs, providing them with context, and then you have your vibe coders or your next level AI engineers coming in to use the tools to solve context problems fast. So, Chinmoy, let's change gears a little bit.
Okay.
We've been talking a lot about today's SDLC and the use cases of AI already. What about tomorrow's SDLC? What do we think is going to happen in the next, say, 12 months?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, we're already seeing some of it happen outside our industry with the rise of agentic coding tools and agentic software development tools, which essentially use agentic AI to string together a bunch of different steps in one go. So an example of this would be, you provide a vague description of what you want to see built as a feature or as a complete application. And then the agentic tools go from planning to designing the solution to creating some of the sample data for it, to then building the front end, the back end, the database architecture, deploying it into a cloud environment, performing some of the security checks, creating the unit test for it, like the whole shebang gets done in in a few minutes, but closer to a matter of hours than minutes.
So I can one-shot my app.
You could one-shot your app,
Okay.
yeah.
Is there anything I need to do to prevent it from breaking my production system?
Yes, well, don't give it access to production to begin with, right? That's a basic, that's an easy one. But these are more tools that you would utilize for the developer and the development teams to be elevated, to be augmented in ways that like never before. And we're seeing some of it right now in the current state SDLC, where you may get 30-40% lift from using the right tools with the right personas. But what we will see is the emergence of what we call forward deployed engineering teams. So these are teams that are capable of doing a whole lot more with a culmination of a few skill sets, or a combination of a few skill sets.
Can you tell me more about that? I think forward deployed engineers, doesn't sound like an engineering term I've heard before. I've heard of, T-shaped developers or test first developers.
Sure,
But
yeah.
what is a forward deployed engineer?
So let's look at an engineer today, right? Like the stereotypical definition of an engineer would be someone that builds things. But with the way we see it manifest in practice is it's people building things with a very specific set of instructions, right? Like, here's your exact requirements for the exact system architecture. Go out and make it happen. And that deviates from the description of builders. What we see, or we anticipate to see in the near future with all these agentic tools, is the resurgence of pure builders. And forward deployed teams are nothing but combinations of people that can span multiple different roles. So you have engineers that can lean a little bit into the product design side of things, that can interact better with the business, that have a little bit of the consulting mindset, that can think beyond just the implementation of the systems. And because we're lifting them out of the nitty-gritty of code creation and so on, they're able to stretch into different areas. Now that'll go the other way as well. We will see more business analysts, more business owners, more product creators who have traditionally been away from the engineering side, getting pulled in more into actually creating things. Some of our teams in our AI lab can work with a domain expert and create prototypes without writing a single line of code, but it is a fully functional prototype. So that shrinks that iteration cycle even smaller, and you're able to get real-time feedback from business users as to whether this will actually solve some of their problems or, address a challenge that many of our clients are facing. So that's basically what forward deployed teams are. It'll be teams that comprise engineering, product, business skill sets, that have the consulting mindset. They're just problem solvers and builders, and they're deployed way up at the start of the SDLC instead of later on in the life cycle where it's now time to create. They're creating constantly, and that's a huge paradigm shift.
That is a paradigm shift. I'm thinking through kind of historical paradigm shifts. I'm thinking through, we've seen similar things, industrial age, and all those kind of different transformations.
Even in the industry, there's this perception, you might say there's a little bit of a fear that there will be less engineering to be done. And some of the best minds in the industry right now are saying there will be more engineering to be done, because the barrier to entry to get into engineering and creating solutions and being a builder has been eliminated because of these AI tools. Not only is AI able to teach you better than probably a human would, but also these agentic tools really take away the technical barriers of knowing syntax and knowing languages and things like that. In software development, where the advent of AI tools, the flattening or collapsing of roles into forward deployed engineering teams means that there will be a lot more creativity, a lot more stuff being created, a lot more features being created at a faster pace. And as a whole, that means organizations will be able to adapt better to changing needs, and things will just move faster. But the flip side of that is we also need to have more stuff, right, for people to do. These fertile minds now that are sitting with these enormously powerful tools need to have a constant flow of valuable work, not just busy work to contribute to.
And I think that's really where the opportunity lies for most of our clients is, instead of having a pie that is, cut smaller, smaller, and smaller slices for all of your different functions of your SDLC today, you really will have the need to make more pies. So you can have
Right.
more opportunities to open new value chains, open new opportunities, making customer taste a part of your day-to-day life cycle, and also taking from the regulatory standpoint, building from secure from the beginning can really be a next level adoption for most of our clients.
That's a very good point, right? Like, where do you come up with these analogies, by the way? First it was F1, now it's pies. The point that I really liked in there was the thing about taste. And this is another emerging opinion amongst the industry experts, is that in an environment where there's a lot of AI slop, I believe is the term,
Yep.
right? Like, there's no shortage of content because it's so easy to create it. There's no shortage of software because it's so easy to create it. Taste and the ability to adapt to what actually generates business value and provides a richer experience, a better experience for your customers is going to be the differentiator. And you and me as engineers, we love talking about the shiny toys and the future is really bright and all of that. But I couldn't emphasize more that it's not just about deploying agentic tools and everything comes with it, right? Like, it's not like we'll magically get the agentic, the forward deployed teams just available. They won't sprout out of nowhere. For folks that are listening to this, I couldn't emphasize more that you have to create that environment for teams to excel and for them to feel comfortable stepping out of their roles, and stepping into other people's roles in some cases, right? As well as creating space for them to innovate and re-engineer and learn and so on. So it's not just about tooling. It is an organizational change. It is a structural change. And in many ways, I mean, think about it. If the agents are doing all the SDLC stuff for you, what does the process really look like? It would just be, look at all the outputs that are created and make sure they're compliant and auditable, and let you get through all the control checks to go into production.
We get to go back to what I really, drew me to engineering was I get to solve complex problems. That's ultimately what engineers and what it sounds like forward deployed engineers are going to do is these teams are going to be able to solve complex problems. They're going to have a suite of, and this is where we come back to the reference we made earlier, a suite of armor around your SDLC handling that day-to-day lifecycle work while you get to go and have those engaging conversations with clients and stakeholders, do that market research to solve complex problems and take everything further.
And you know what, on the topic of complex problems, we all talk about creating and building and developing new stuff, but we seldom overlook the value of these agentic solutions in protecting your environment, right? So you keep, this is, I think, the third time we're going to reference it in this discussion, but the suit of armor around your production. Any use cases come to mind for this around securing our operations or anything?
Yeah, I think dating back a little bit to some of my implementation days, a lot of what I would do is I would get a production issue. I think this is the most critical one where I have to take a production issue, which means I have to context switch. I have to stop my greenfield development. Then I have to go and look at the logs. I got to find the database record. I got to take what I'm hearing from the client. I got to try and imagine and put myself in their shoes. With an AI solution, it can give me all of that stuff along with, hey, a notice that you have a production issue. So it starts doing that observation. And, not steal the thunder from the predictions we're going to make here in a little bit about 2026, but self-healing. I think that's where the suit of armor really starts to take its next step and move forward. And you made a reference earlier, but the analogy part there, that's a little bit of a Marvel reference for our listeners at home.
Let's talk about what we expect to see in 2026. You already referenced some of it, but what are your top predictions?
Yeah, if 2025 was really the age of AI and AI agents, really, thinking about where we need to maybe recalibrate a little bit and think through a step back to go forward, thinking through AI solutions. AI engineers have a lot of bigger problems to solve, which means they need to way to organize their context. And I think really the AI of context and recalibrating. Also, I think a lot of our clients have seen where technologies need to be updated. If we think back to a kind of a spectrum of evolution of AI, it's the agile and waterfall, it's the DevSecOps and the cloud transformation, moving from on-prem to cloud. A lot of these technologies, a lot of our clients have different kind of understandings across the spectrum, which I think has been highlighted by, hey, I want to adopt a new AI. Maybe I need to take a step back and, put some work into the foundations, infrastructure. And speaking of foundations and infrastructure, can't have financial services without data. And I think that's also going to be a key theme in 2026 and how it not only fuels different tastes for our clients and our customers, but also thinking through what the data will be for our engineers. Can I be able to query a database and get, use AI to understand, build me my SQL script, build me my data schema, help me make sure I account for all my edge counts or edge cases. Thinking about, maybe I'm building a new process that will open new accounts, wealth asset management space. Thinking through opening new accounts for clients. There's lots of different registration types you can do. You can do your individuals, your trust, your IRAs. Those different types will really allow for us to have different data, but really the foundation of where we're collecting the data is the same. If I can use AI to automate and make it to where it accounts for all of those edge cases at once, I go from multiple sprints, multiple workloads of let me do individual this week. Next week I'll do a trust. I can have AI kind of source that all for me and really allow for my data to be less fragmented. It allows for me to go faster.
Wow. Okay. So, and then in that sense, you might even be able to use usage logs, right? Like usage analytics that you get from the tools that track everything you do on a web page and so on, and use that to inform your products prioritize.
Fantastic point. If I think about a lot of the SDLC, the regulatory nature of change, regulatory pressures often come after adoption of a new technology. That means a lot of the new security first, design first thinking, the, being secure by design, all of those things come on top of existing patterns and processes. And I think that allows for, a lot of complex ways to handle and use AI to make all those things come first.
All right, Cody. So I feel like we may have extrapolated a little too far and left planet Earth. Let's bring it back. In real terms, what do you see as your top predictions for what's going to happen in the near future with AI and the SDLC?
Absolutely. If I think through 2025, it was the rise of agentic coding, different paradigms of coding technologies like spec-first development, vibe coding, context engineering, and the latest and greatest that are coming very quickly. If I think through 2026, I think it's going to be how do you take your senior engineers and give them the ability to do proper context management, but also how do they evolve and what's the data tell us? I think we've been trying to capture a lot of ROI with a lot of our client engagements this year. And I think through, 2026 is going to be adapting with analytics. As we near the end of the pod, I have to give you one more analogy.
Of course.
Thinking through, one of the other hobbies I have in the free time is watching and playing sports. It's NBA season, so one of the things I like to do at the beginning of each season is think through the latest trends. An interesting one caught my eye. Last year, we're starting to see this evolution become reality where the three-pointer is becoming more and more popular of a shot than the two-pointer.
Okay.
It's leaning into the early 2000 teens of analytics, how you can score more threes if you do it at scale and at, really, throw the ball up a lot. And if you make more threes than twos, you win the game. And I think this has been widely popularized. What caught my eye was the report that it's changing fundamental foundations of the game. Dating back to the early days, rebounding has always been a popular part of it. And you wouldn't think, shooting more threes means I got to change rebounding. It means, but it really does have a foundation because the ball comes off of the rim in a different trajectory, meaning I have to change how I will rebound the ball so I can, pass the ball down to my shooters who shoot more threes on their end. What this is really meaning is that the NBA is changing the archetype of what a great rebounder is. They're having to go from a big, bruising kind of rebounder down in the paint to somebody who can flash and jump to different areas of the floor. Being able to really lean into the ball's going to jump, 4 or 5 feet further from the rim. And what's important here is the trends are telling us that more and more adoption of the three is happening, which means more and more people are going to have to adapt how they rebound. Thinking about, the youth leagues and how they have to adopt it versus the pro leagues, they all have to reskill and relearn how to rebound a ball, which is a foundation to NBA basketball or any basketball in general. I see a similarity here in the SDLC. And I'll get to my point now that I'm done with my analogy. But I think ultimately the way we've had to do the SDLC, working across different parts of the phases and understanding the different people and specialists in each one, you have to account for some of that unpredictability. I don't think today or if 12 months ago anybody was thinking about the NBA would have said, there's a correlation between shooting more threes. I have to fundamentally relearn how to rebound the ball. I think there's some of that going to happen next year in the SDLC. As we adapt our data, as we adapt our context, as we adopt these tools, and as we accelerate these efficiencies, we're going to be able to capture that data to say, how should I pivot? How should I reskill? How should I be a forward-facing engineer? And being able to really capitalize on this AI-infused momentum.
Wow, that's a king of the analogies, this one. I mean, that's another good one. So creating engineers that are shooting more three-pointers is both the output as well as the impetus for the change. We're going to have to re-engineer a bunch of our own processes to enable that to happen and change how organizations function. I can do one prediction, right? So for me, I think it is the ubiquitousness of AI tooling. So especially within financial services, just this year, we've seen many firms publicly announce that they make AI tooling available to all. And I think that has probably limited itself to productivity tooling and business-focused usage tooling like your chat agents and things like that, with some notable exceptions. So I think that will become a lot more mainstream. We'll see organizations grant their engineers an agentic AI license as soon as they start working on a new project, and that'll become more ubiquitous. And then with it comes a whole slew of other tools to kind of secure your SDLC as well. But that's my prediction more in real terms.
I think the last one I'll make here is we're going to see a rise of the importance of data. Financial services, regulating data, using data for customer taste is nothing new. AI in financial services is really not new if you think about fraud prevention, other predictable analytics that we have in our banking and payment space. Thinking through a little bit of where data is going to also revolutionize the SDLC. Being able to use agentic solutions, using agentic coding solutions as well to pull data in real time, accelerating the ability for me to make a decision and understanding like what's going on in the logs, what's going on in the database, what's going on in the user feedback and my capturing of my tickets and all those different context switching potential elements that I have to look at. What it really allows me to do is pull AI from all these different sources, giving me the ability to have a unified report, make a decision faster, to turn around and make our customer's lives better even faster. And I think that's, as an engineer, what I'm really excited about, thinking about how data is going to amplify the SDLC through context engineering and agentic solutions.
Yeah, as an engineer, you're like nothing more than someone giving you a list of all the things that everyone wants without trying to have so many conversations.
Exactly.
Great point, yeah. So we've spoken a lot about everything that might happen, everything that will happen. Let's talk about what we're actually doing to help our clients in the journey. We spoke about some of the challenges and limitations of everything that's currently available. I think important to get the foundational stuff right. So we are helping our clients select the right tooling for their ecosystems and their SDLC. In some cases, it might be one tool. In other cases, it might be a selection of tools distributed across the entire lifecycle. But it is important to not go overboard and just have, overwhelming number of tools that don't necessarily work together. And then there's, of course, accelerators and best practices for using the tools correctly, especially the agentic ones have generally accepted best practices that may accelerate the efficiency of your engineers. I think also important to mention that the process itself is in need of some re-engineering. We've brought that up a couple times already. And so we're helping our clients identify the bottlenecks, think about the steps that they really need to keep versus what they can automate with some trust in responsible AI. So re-engineering the SDLC process is the other area we're helping our clients. And then, of course, reskilling, upskilling your engineers and your forward deployed teams to be able to develop more, produce more features, and generally be more productive is the third area.
Which is a great segue to one of the things I'm actively happy about. There's two things you said there, actually. One is I'm selfishly really pushing and working with clients to adopt more tooling, more AI tooling, because selfishly I want to use the tools and actual solving of problems. But the second one there you said about training and upskilling and relearning some of the AI technologies. I think one common theme that I'm seeing personally in some of my conversations with clients are finding time to upskill. There's competing priorities for all of the macro and micro economical states, trying to make sure I end the 2025 strong, do 2026 great. it's really about helping find times for myself to learn, but also for our clients to find times for all of their engineers as well as themselves to continue to upskill. And I think that's one thing that we are helping our clients with, not only recognizing, but also capturing that moment and knowing which trainings to take,
Right.
what is vetted by our own internal AI lab, but also thinking through what, I can get from this. Because I think having a new foundation with these new technologies and these new paradigms allows for really great things to happen in 2026.
That's a great point. And actually, with some of our clients, we're already talking about just give us your tooling, right? Treat us as an extension of your team. We're already co-developing solutions with you, with our cross-functional teams. If we're allowed to use your tooling, we may be able to deliver value faster and better. Okay, so to close, I'm going to try to string together all of your analogies in one message as a key takeaway from this. AI-infused SDLC is going to help your teams develop more three-point shooters, shave seconds off of your F1 race time, and build more pies for everyone to enjoy.
That's a great way to
How'd I do?
summarize our conversation. I think this was a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, man.
I really encourage everybody to watch out for our next episode.
Thank you for listening, and go check out some AI tools and see how you can infuse them in your workflows.